Elliott. I represent my son, Artie Elliott III. We affectionately call him Artie because there were 3 Archies in the family, so I wanted something different. And I almost don't call my son Archie at all. He was 24 years old when he was killed. He had worked on a construction job that day in Virginia, and he was less than 3 minutes from home when the first officer stopped him because the car was weaving, as he described it. He was a young white police officer with the District Heights Municipal Police Department. And where my son was stopped was less than about 500 yards from the municipal department on Kipling Parkway and Marbury Drive in District Heights, Maryland. We're about 8 miles or 12 miles from the nation's capital. And my son complied with the request of Officer Levitt. He did exactly what he instructed him to do, but he did have to lean on the trunk of the cruiser just to steady himself. And he told the officer, and it's in his sworn deposition, all I want to do is go home and go to sleep. And they left him, that particular officer left him sitting on the curb, wearing only shorts, no shirt, tennis shoes, no socks. And he was intoxicated because he had stopped to get some beer with some friends of his. And the first officer called for backup. Why, I don't know. If he had put my son in the cruiser after he was searched, he was searched by the first officer. No contraband whatsoever was found. And they put him in the front seat of this District Heights police cruiser that had dark tinted windows that were rolled up. And I just cried when I thought, did they have the air conditioning on? Because I called the weather people that day and said, what would the inside of a car be with the temperature outside like 97 degrees? He said it would be like 110 or 115 degrees. And my neighbor heard me crying, and that was why I was crying on the front porch of my house. And what they alleged as they stood near the cruiser, very close to the cruiser, saying that he had a gun, that he pointed the gun out the window was their lie. And when we got to federal court, the judge said, back up, wait a minute, how can you say that he pointed a gun out the window if the windows were rolled up? Oh, did I say that? So lawyers do what they get paid for, as my former husband said, Judge Elliott. Lawyers lie because that's what they're supposed to do. But at any rate, they fired into that car 22 times, and 14 shots struck my son. It took me a long time to read that autopsy report, which that's another barrier. They don't want the autopsy report going to the families when they kill someone. And there was a feud with the Alex Williams, who was the state's attorney at that time, and the medical examiner. And for some reason, they didn't want the autopsy report released. And our attorney, I'm so sorry, he passed about a year and a half after my son was killed. So he wrote them a letter to both of them and said, release that autopsy report. And I know within a matter of a few days, we did get it. And my sister saw it. It took me 6 months before I could actually look at it. And he had nothing in his system. The little white police officer, well, he looked like he was on something. And Attorney Mundy said, are you trained to determine whether someone is on drugs or not? And I don't think there was an answer for that. But anyway, we appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court because the officers were not indicted, no charges whatsoever, after the grand jury finished its term. But they did say that police officers need to learn when to shoot, when not to shoot. They need to learn how to search someone. And Prince George's County Police Department said, well, the criteria that the municipal police department used would not meet their criteria. So, and I'll never forget how this District Heights chief of police said, convoy, that it was a good shoot. I mean, do you intentionally kill somebody? 14 shots, it's a good shoot. And every 18th of the month, we would go to the site, my family, myself and friends and gather at the site and have what we call a prayer vigil. And that went on, like I said, for about 6 months, but I began to speak out more and more about what happened to my son and to let people know. And I think initially, I believed that there was going to be justice in my son's case. I just knew they had to indict the officers. I just knew that they would be kicked off the force, as Attorney Mundy said. And our case went downhill a lot after Mr. Mundy was killed. After he died. He was only like 64, I believe, when he passed. And that was heartbreaking because I had faith in Mr. Mundy. I just knew that when he saw the pictures of my son's body in his office, and my nephew was there with me, they asked me to leave the room. And when I came back, Mr. Mundy was very visibly shaken. He said they're not only going to get kicked off the force, they're going to get jail time. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So we lost our civil suit after we went to the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, and they sided with the police officers. Qualified immunity. That's a term that they're going to try to get rid of or make it harder for the police to say that was their excuse for killing someone. And even if a person has a gun, they didn't kill Dylan Root, who shot 9 people at the church. And when the shooter at the White House some years back scaled the White House fence, it was civilians who apprehended the man, and then up comes the police, park police, whatever it is, and they took him away. But there are a lot of instances when white people have had weapons, and the police officers know that they've used them. In the case of, what's his name? Blake. Yeah, I can't think of his first name. But anyway, they saw this man running with this rifle and with his hands up. He just killed people, and the police officers just waving him on by. And I'm so glad that they caught this young guy who did the shooting. I think he was 17 or so, coming from another state. They didn't kill him. I don't know if they were aware of who he was at that time, but certainly when they did encounter him, he's alive and well. And as far as I know, he wasn't battered or beaten at all. So why is there a goddamn double standard when it comes to black people? And I'm like, Gina, I'm mad too. And there are times when it's hard to keep it inside. And I think that what they're doing is causing more young black males to say, this isn't going to happen to me. And they don't like what's going on. And they're fearful for their family, they're fearful for themselves. But I say we need to agitate. There's got to be police reform. It's badly needed. Police officers need to be accountable, and police chiefs need not to continue shielding them. Not only is Prince George's County getting a bad rap for this, they are all over. And the police chief should be held accountable. Make those crooked cops pay. They're criminals as far as I'm concerned, because if we do what they did, we'd be locked up within a heartbeat. And also change the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, which I have personally testified against in Annapolis for about 5 years. And in one of my speeches, I said, you move them around just like they do with the priests, the pedophile priests. And one of the legislators in Annapolis said, well, don't compare that. And the chairman of the committee said, no, let her speak. And I finished saying what I had to say, because that's what they do. They move them around precinct to precinct. And one of the officers, the black one, Wayne Chaney, killed again 20 months after killing my son. And he killed a white guy this time. And only one shot was fired. No mention, almost none, just 1 or 2 little articles. And when they came out with their decision of no indictment, it was on a day when there was another big news event going on. So I think they timed their release of what happened so that people won't look at them, and they'll look at the other news that's going on at the time. And I'm going to continue talking about what happened, and even if this new state's attorney does not reopen my son's case, they are going to hear from us, continue to hear from us. And that's why the scholarship fund is very, very important. It's an annual event, and it's twofold, really, to help young minority students go to HBCUs, and also to say, this is what happened to Archie Elliott III. And as Reverend Fontour said, and Dick Gregory and Martin Luther King III, and many, many others came out to support us when the pictures of my son's body were put on that internet. People came out in droves. And we did it for 22 consecutive Wednesdays, protesting at the courthouse in Upper Marlboro. And it was exhilarating to have all those people there supporting us. And I may have mentioned earlier, for those who were here, that Joe Madison, who did a hunger strike, I think it was like 120 some days, and I would take him his juice or fruit to the station. He'd let me talk and say what's going on. So we did have support, and they're continuing to support us. And Joe Madison said whatever he could do to help our cause, he said, just let him know. And we have two young attorneys who were with us from the very beginning, Attorney Thomas Ruffin and Attorney Malik Shabazz, who are going to represent us if the state's attorney reopened that case. And again, I'm so thankful for the support. And years ago, I said, I want to go to the Justice Department and have a hunger strike there myself. I had quite a few things. I'd even said a boycott for at least a month. Don't buy anything in Prince George's County, or buy only the necessities in Prince George's County. And I call it a lot of barriers to families getting justice, the autopsy report, and not keeping the family informed. And I was constantly calling people, and I didn't want to speak to these sergeants and whomever. I wanted to speak to the top person, and I made a note of everything that was said, the date and time, and my book is coming out. I gotta promise myself I must write that book, because it will be telling. And I just pray to God that things will change. I really do. I pray that the police officers will wake up. For those who are good, decent police officers, to say something when they see something going on, and not let an innocent person die. Let them go to jail. If they broke the law, don't try to mete out judgment right there on the street. Let the judge and the jury decide what's going to happen. So I pray a lot for my son, who just turned 38. I'm constantly praying that he'll be safe. And he has a lot of feelings too that's inside. And one reporter wrote, says, silent screams. And that's what I say sometimes, because I don't like, being too emotional. I keep it in, but when I do cry, it's a big one most times. So we're still dealing with it every day, even if it's been 27 years.
So where can people find this petition?
The petition is not on here. I can send it to you. I think it says sign.move-on.org/petitions-Archie and then Artie. It's not on here.
We'll be sure to attach it to this live. I said thank you for sharing your story. I said we're definitely going to share this out. And
Send this again.
No, I was saying we'll attach the link to this live. So I said we just want to thank you for sharing your story and thank you for your courageousness. And we're going to be here to fight for you.
I don't know